Mark, an ambitious reporter, has spent years investigating the mysterious disappearances of prominent figures in his city. All his attempts to gather critical information end in dead ends, and his reports become less and less interesting to his editors. One day, he stumbles upon an old archive containing evidence that could shed light on these disappearances. Among the documents are photographs, newspaper clippings, and notes hinting at the existence of a secret society. However, when Mark tries to deliver the materials to his editor, the archive mysteriously vanishes. From this moment, Mark's life turns into a nightmare. People around him start acting strangely. Strangers observe him on the street, and peculiar letters signed "The Shadow" begin appearing in his mailbox. Mark decides to uncover the identity of those sending these letters. His investigation reveals that all the missing individuals were connected to a mysterious organization known as the Shadow Circle. This group meticulously conceals its existence and seems to eliminate anyone who threatens to expose its secrets. Mark receives a message from an anonymous informant claiming to have evidence of the Shadow Circle's existence. They arrange a meeting in an abandoned building on the outskirts of the city, and then, on March 15, 1961. During the meeting, the informant tells Mark about a mystical artifact called the Shadow Key. This artifact, they say, is linked to the disappearances and allows the Circle's members to control their victims. However, before the informant can provide the evidence, they are discovered. Mark manages to escape, but he loses yet another vital lead. After his escape, Mark finds a strange object in his car, a small figurine made of a material resembling black obsidian. Its surface is engraved with the same symbol he saw in the archive. It seems someone deliberately left it for him. Each day, the pressure on Mark intensifies. Strangers follow him, his apartment is searched, and his belongings are mysteriously moved. One day, he finds surveillance footage showing himself entering the newsroom at night, even though he knows he was at home at that time. Mark starts to suspect that the shadow is somehow manipulating his mind. He recalls that his father, also a reporter, disappeared under similar circumstances many years ago. He decides to delve into his father's records and finds an old notebook with key entries. It turns out his father was close to uncovering the Shadow's Circle, but never finished his investigation. Soon, Mark begins having dreams filled with strange symbols and visions. One of these visions features the obsidian figurine. He realizes this item is not just a warning, but a key to understanding what's happening. The psychological pressure mounts. Mark hears voices whispering his name when he is alone. He sees shadows moving in his apartment, though he knows it's impossible. One night, he wakes up with the eerie feeling that someone is sitting by his bed, but when he turns on the light, the room is empty. His friends and colleagues begin distancing themselves, thinking he's losing his mind. Mark starts documenting everything in a journal, hoping it will help him stay grounded. However, he soon discovers that the pages are filled with words and symbols he doesn't remember writing. At some point, he begins to doubt whether he is part of the conspiracy himself. Mark decides to investigate the missing individuals in more detail. He finds a common link between them. They all visited the same library in the city center a few weeks before their disappearance. When he visits the library, Mark notices it looks abandoned, although it's still officially open. He meets an elderly librarian who tells him that the missing people often checked out the same book. She shows him the catalog, but the pages related to the book are torn out. Despite this, she recalls the title, Shadows Beyond the Veil. Mark sets out to find this book and locates it in an antique store. On the first pages, he sees the same symbols engraved on the figurine. The book turns out to be a collection of stories tied to the disappearances. Mark notices that each story ends with the description of a person consumed by the shadow. The last entry is written in handwriting that seems familiar. It is his father's handwriting. Mark becomes convinced that his father was also involved in investigating the shadow circle. He discovers newspaper clippings about a group of people who tried to expose the circle, but all vanished without a trace. Among them is a photograph of a man he has seen in his dreams. Mark realizes the dreams are not just visions, but a way for the circle to communicate with him. Mark finds an entrance to an abandoned library beneath an old building that once belonged to an influential city family. Inside, he discovers journals, documents, and symbols confirming the existence of the shadow circle. One book in particular catches his attention. Its pages are filled with strange formulas and drawings, including mentions of the shadow key and descriptions of rituals supposedly used to control people's minds. Mark realizes this society has been using ancient knowledge to gain power. He encounters the group's leader, who calls themselves the Shadow. It turns out the Shadow is not a single person, but a collective entity. Those who join the society lose their individuality and become part of this collective consciousness. The leader offers Mark a deal. He can join them and leave behind his fears and worries, or face the same fate as his father. He has two options: stop and save himself, or continue fighting to expose the shadow circle. The screen physics laboratory's building flashed green, cutting through the ultraviolet. Daniel grabbed his toolkit. In the end, he sends all the gathered evidence to his newsroom, but finds himself trapped in the library.